All right. Welcome to Halitics and happy Memorial Day. I'm really excited to have my good friend and longtime compadre on radio and now video, Jack Quirk, pundit. And let me welcome you, Jack. Good morning.
Thank you. Good luck, pundit. I've been promoted.
Yes, you're promoted to pundit.
Yeah, last time we talked, I was just a guy on the radio, and so I've been elevated. I hope I can live up to this new standard here.
Well, I didn't put in the Catholic. I guess it would in this case be an adjective. Right. Catholic Jack Quirk.
Well,
yep.
Everything but pundit. I'll try and live up to pundit, see how it works.
Well, I like using the Catholic too because the reason, and we've discussed this, and I never would do it if you had any objection, but in the past you have never recoiled against being identified by your faith because I think it informs your views, right? I mean, pretty much all your positions seem to be at least closely connected, closely consistent, if not absolutely consistent with what I understand Catholic theology to be, and where it's not, you explain it pretty well. That's why I once accused you of being. It's not really. It's actually a compliment. Complimented you by asking if you were a Jesuit, but I didn't realize at that time, as I do now. My son, a proud Georgetown University graduate. Jesuits are priests.
Yeah, I spent a short time getting educated by Jesuits in between college and law school, but. I don't think there's a Jesuit in existence that has lower than a 150 IQ. So that's quite a compliment. I suggest I was a Jesuit, but
being a lawyer is kind of similar, right? Your legal training is kind of similar to and I would say Talmudic training too for Jews is basically trying to figure out very thorny questions that don't really have clear-cut answers and then trying to justify your answers. So that sounds like law to me.
There's a lot to that, but no, I don't. Past college, I don't have any kind of formal theological training, but yeah, that's no. I've got a lot of admiration for the Jesuits, and I know that you've had family studying under Jesuits on the East Coast there.
Oh, no question about it. And I was very, very pleased and proud of the education my son received. And I, too, at Georgetown Law, though it's pretty much secular, more so than the university, the college grads at that school have had some training, I believe. At least a lot of their professors are Jesuits. So, Jack, let's just talk briefly about you. I was surprised to learn we actually moved the time of the show just to accommodate you. It was inconvenient for me, but I went out of my way to delay the start by an hour because I knew it would be tough for you being there in Arizona on Mountain Standard Time. Explain to us how you've wended your way from Monterey. Then you were in Michigan, Grand Rapids for a while. You moved to somewhere in central Illinois, as best I can understand it. And now you're in the Grand Canyon State. So that's quite a peripatetic existence, is it not?
Well, yes, and staying one step ahead of the law. But
why don't I believe that?
We moved out here to be near a grandchild. That was the original inspiration. But we're up here in the mountains. If you look on a map, we're in the upper northeast corner of Arizona. It's probably not sensible thing to tell.
Northeast. So you're over by that Four Corners area.
Sure. I've only been here for a year, and it takes me a while. I think it's being thrown off because when I look at what seems to be what's going on the broadcast, my lips and my words are not
don't worry about just you're fine here. Just look at me, or just don't look at yourself, or we'll figure that out, Jack.
That way. I like looking at you. Al, I haven't seen you in a while. You haven't changed at all.
So are you saying, Jack, that my lips are moving, but you're not hearing me at the same moment?
No, your lips are fine. I was just looking at my lips. There's two pictures of me. One that's over your head, and that's out of sync. But then there's one up in the upper right-hand corner here.
Okay, yeah, don't that. Then look at the one that's in sync, and don't confuse yourself or me, because then something's bound to go wrong at some point. I don't know. We always get into these digressions. Again, it's that legal / Jesuitical training of yours to, I don't know, confuse me and put me off my game. So well done. Bravo. Well played. No, I was saying you're in the Four Corners region of Arizona. That's where the 4 states all come together. We're talking about New Mexico and Arizona from right to left. And then above, you've got Utah and Colorado. So that's a pretty forsaken region, is it not? I mean, what are you, 30 miles from your nearest neighbor?
Well, we've yes. Well, we're not. I don't know about 30 miles, but it's pretty sparse right around here.
It's beautiful. No, I'm just playing games.
We've even got some goats. We're getting into the spirit of the thing, and we have some goats, and the girls like them a lot. So we're so we're getting into the swing of things, and.
Well, we'll come visit you. We'll be out there because we've been looking to travel to southern Utah, where there's a lot of beautiful national parks. So we would be close to you, and it is quite a scenic area. Jack Quirk with us on Halitics. It's Memorial Day. Join us if you like, 363-7190. Let's talk about Memorial Day. So one of the, teachings of the Catholic Church that I do find most admirable, Jack, is their pro-peace view. It's very anti-war. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about veterans who have died in the service, Americans who have died fighting in the Ukrainian army and actually getting some full honors, according to the Washington Post, but honors by the Ukrainian government, not by our government. What's your take on that, Jack?
On Americans doing it? Well, I mean, we're not sending them over there by force. So, there's no complaint as far as that goes. But, the Ukrainians look to me to be defending themselves. You mentioned Catholic teaching on the issue of warfare, and you can really boil it down to defensive warfare only. But I think that what the Ukrainians are doing is defensive. Ultimately defensive. I mean, they were attacked, and you've got to respond when that happens. I mean, they pretty much had the choice of defending themselves or being overrun. So I'm happy to see that they're actually able to resist that. I wish we could. Russia seems to be imitating the United States actions in recent years, and so to a certain extent, I can. Say that the neocon philosophy that we had for so many years is coming back to bite us. So I'll cast blame there, but I certainly can't complain about the Ukrainians and what they're trying to do.
All right, I think that's fair, right? A country, Russia definitely instigated that war, but my beef with the U.S. is that rather than trying with China, with the UN to broker a peace agreement, we have been perpetuating endless war, and from where I sit, fighting until the last Ukrainian. And and to that point, I would give the American soldiers, the dead and wounded who have been fighting in the Ukrainian army, at least they're putting their own lives on the line. Whereas it seems, not that I want America to join Ukraine, as you point out, our record is so bad, Jack. We have been the imperialist state. We have been, to use, I think it was a term by, I don't know even who, the great Satan, in many aspects. At least in this situation, those folks that have died and are being celebrated on Memorial Day, at least were willing to put their own lives on the line rather than just promote more killing, as our weapons are doing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I see your point there. The only problem I have with it is that the I mean, our choice really is to just watch and let the Russians walk over the place, notwithstanding their fecklessness, surprising fecklessness, and what they were doing. We could just stand and watch, or we could help out.
See, and I've heard that before.
I think that I think the Ukrainians have every right to defend themselves, and that's what they're doing. I mean, okay. What can we do as far as peace negotiations? Well, I think that Zelensky has to give us a lead there. I mean, this is his country. I mean, eventually, if there's going to be a peace agreement between the two, it's going to end up with Ukraine giving some territorial concessions, and because that's the only way it's going to work out. That's the only way that Putin's going to feel that he can tell his people that he's given a.
But if you look at what's happening already, I mean, you saw that video I played over while you were speaking. So we heard what you had to say, Jack, and I thought it was very powerful. But they've already lost Bakhmut. Ukraine isn't going to get Crimea back. It does not strike me that Ukraine is necessarily on the side of angels here whatsoever, or Zelensky is on the side of angels. They have also picked fights with Russia, with the Azov battalion neo-Nazis in that organization, going after Russians in East Ukraine, and also picking fights with Russia by tightening up relationships with the West, turning their back on Russia, even though it's very unclear whether the current regimes got the backing of the majority of Ukrainians. There was a more pro-Russian President Yanukovych, I think is how it's pronounced, Yanukovych, I believe, who was deposed back in 2014. So there's a lot of, there's arguments on both sides, I would say. What we've been doing, and I understand, and there may be some factual disagreement, is pressuring Zelensky not to make peace with Russia, not to enter into some kind of agreement to put down the arms and at least have a ceasefire and see if something could be worked out. What I want to see us do is everything possible to promote a cessation of the hostilities.
Well, I don't. Excuse me. I don't see any. I don't know that I've seen any evidence that we're pressuring Zelensky not to engage in peace talks. Now let's just start from the beginning of what you said there. I mean, Crimea, yeah, I think that's gone, and I think there was evidence there that a lot of people in Crimea were happy to be part of Russia. At that time, that's the way it looked to me. And of course, Crimea was originally part of Russia, but what happened there was that Khrushchev, you may remember him, that guy with the shoe at the UN.
I actually don't. I just want to interrupt you real quick. Let you know John is on the line. We have John calling, but finish your point, Jack, and then we'll go to John. So please go ahead. The
UN. I said UN. I don't know why. What happened with that is that Khrushchev ceded Crimea to Ukraine, but that was when it was all part of the Soviet Union. But Crimea was originally part of Russia. Now there's the Donbass area and stuff like that. There's some questions as to whether or not those people want to be part of Russia. I think that the best way to settle these things is let the people in that area decide where they want to be. I mean, that's just have a vote.
Well, and again, maybe you do.
But Putin is whatever his arguments may be, and if Ukraine wants to, as a country, align itself with the West, that's up to the Ukrainians. Now, I understand that there was.
Well, I mean, that sounds good, but then when Cuba decided as a nation to align itself with Russia in 1962, that didn't go so well, right? I mean, we didn't take kindly to that particular military hookup.
Well, what the alignment to Russia really happened as a result of our hostility towards Cuba. We didn't want we didn't want our businesses socialized, so that's that's how capitalism works. And I'm not saying that I'm not. You mentioned that Zelensky isn't on the side of the angels, and I think you'll have a hard time finding anybody on the side of the angels when it comes to international conflict. But one bright line that I draw and that is that when you invade another country, well, you're in the wrong. You're in the wrong.
All right. Well, let's.
Russia's done.
And I guess what I would say is, fine, Russia's in the wrong, but again, their actions are tantamount to what we've been doing in our hemisphere in Latin America. And one other point, again, I don't want this to escalate. I think there are ways we could tamp it down. I'm going to have the last word for this moment. I want to get John on, and then maybe we'll move on to another topic. John, thanks so much for calling. You should be heard now as well as hearing us. Good day and happy Memorial Day, John.
Oh, happy Memorial Day. Hello, Hal. Hello, Jack.
Hey.
Can you hear me okay? Is it a good?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. So, Hal, I feel like you've written off the, you said the Ukrainians can't get Crimea back. And they have not been able to fully implement all the modern technology that we've given them yet. There has not been an offensive yet where they've been able to use the M1 tanks and all of our allies' equivalents to it. The long-range rockets that were given to them by the British that enable them to reach areas in Crimea. F-16s, which are now being transferred to them, and they still have yet to be trained on them, but that's going to take a few months. So by the end of the year, they could be gaining air superiority in this war. I think to say that they lost Bakhmut is like some sort of turning point in this war is incorrect. I think they were using Bakhmut as sort of like well, on a much smaller scale, the infantry and combat engineers will pick out certain terrain features that they want to channel the enemy through and use those terrain features to, not only set up mines and barbed wire and claymore mines, but they use the terrain feature itself to sort of channel people together and slaughter them. And I think they felt like they were winning a war. They weren't going to win Bakhmut. They were winning a war of
We're losing you a little bit. I'm sorry, John. We lost you for just a sec, but we got you back. So go ahead. You feel like they're winning a war by what? By, like you said, attrition, like the kill numbers that we use in Vietnam to claim?
Whenever they find themselves in a position where they're winning a war of attrition, like in Bakhmut, they may suffered no delusion that they were going to keep the territory because the Russians simply outnumber them. But if they're killing, 5 Russians to every 2 Ukrainians, they see that as a victory for now. Until they can employ other strategies, which they were limited to because of the ground is still kind of mushy there, and they can't roll out their new battle tanks that they were given by NATO and the United States, the M1s. Things are going to change here soon, and especially when they employ these F-16s and gain air superiority over the Russians. That's going to be a pivotal point in this war. I don't think that you should write them off yet. They have yet to employ all the modern technology.
Well, I just want the killing to stop, John. I mean, what you're talking about is more death, more destruction. And I just think that's not what we should be promoting. I think we should be trying everything possible to end it. And if there were a battle in the end for Crimea, I can't believe that might not turn into a hot into a war, a world war. And so
Well, you know what that
I'm
sounds
sort of,
like to
I'm
me,
sort
Hal?
of, I'm aghast, honestly. That's how my reaction is to it. Go ahead, make your final word,
What
John.
the? Okay, what that sounds like to me is, let's just, when people break into houses, let's just, let them take what they want, and then that way, maybe people will stop getting hurt in confrontations against burglars. Just hide in a closet, let them take whatever they want, and or even better yet, people who get mugged, let's all go down to the ATMs and pull out a bunch of money and just start giving out money to muggers so they won't mug people. That's what it sounds like to me.
Okay,
If
well,
the Russians invaded Ukraine, and like Jack said, they have a right to defend themselves, and we are giving them the means to defend themselves. And
I don't think we should be
I
doing
think
that.
I think
We're
that
giving them the means to perpetuate endless slaughter, and I would greatly prefer that we were pushing them hard for peace. Let me get Jack in on this, John. Thanks so much for the call. I do have to move on. We can continue. We'll continue this conversation as we go forward. I know into June, but Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think John has a point there, and they do have the right to defend themselves. I don't see anything morally wrong with giving them the ability to do that. But that, on the other hand, when it comes, I agree with you that we should be trying to push for peace. We should. I can understand your point and actually appreciate it when you say that we ought to be being a little more aggressive about getting peace talks in place, maybe working with the Chinese and things like that. But the problem is with that is that I do not see any peace uh, that's going to result without further territorial concessions, and that's that is a that's something that's going to be, from the standpoint of precedent, a a difficult thing to be asking the Ukrainians to do. And on the world stage, you're basically saying, okay, you attack somebody, we have peace talks, and you may not get everything you want, but you do get some territorial concessions from the other side. It's just the what the Russians have done here uh, is so blatantly
I would just a couple
fraud,
thoughts on that.
for lack of a better
Go ahead,
term.
Jack. Go
It's
ahead.
hard to understand. It's hard to get my mind around the idea of a middle ground that the Ukrainians should accept, or should be compelled to accept. That's that's where I run into that. I mean, like I said, you give the Russians the Donbass region, where there had been trouble, that there had been people, Ukrainians themselves, fighting against the government. It and I think the only way that both sides can save face there would be to let the people in those particular regions have a vote. Now, before the Russians invaded, they might have actually, they might have actually gained some territory if, because I think that, I don't know, I didn't go over there and take a poll myself, but it seemed to me that there were a sufficient number of people in those regions that preferred to be a part of Russia or to be aligned with Russia. But I think now, with all the destruction that the Russians have imposed upon the Ukrainians at this point, I don't think there's too many people in Ukraine that looks kindly upon the.
I mean, I'm sure they don't, but I'm sure they also don't look at what's happening to their cities and the fact that even Kiev is being bombed and attacked, and thinking there's got to be anything's got to be better than this. So
Yeah, but I mean, people.
And it wouldn't mean
people have a remarkable resiliency when it comes to when they're getting invaded. I mean, here in the United States, it's hard to put our minds around it, because we've actually
Well, then again, if that's their decision, that's their decision. But I just can't look at our selling, as John was talking about, F-16s and these sophisticated weapon systems that have again led to many hundreds of thousands of deaths on both sides, and see anything but just absolute disaster. I also would just argue, I think we're all being ill-served by our media, which is cheerleading this war rather than, again, letting us know just how bad it's been for both countries.
Well, there you got a point. I mean, we've, you're talking corporate media, and I mean, sure, they cheerleaded Iraq, but see, the thing is, though, is that let's go back to Iraq and how they cheerleaded that. The difference there is that it was plain to any critical thinker at the time that we had no justification for doing what we did. I mean, that was a flat out invasion. But but here the lines aren't so clear. I mean, from that standpoint, I mean, it's one thing if you're going to ask yourself, should the United States invade Iraq, or well, Afghanistan was I think we were entitled to a little retaliation there. The subsequent occupation was highly questionable, but if Europe, comparing what Russia is doing to the United States, as apt as those comparisons are, you also have to look at the what's going on in Ukraine in isolation. We're just talking about.
I agree. I don't think you can really. But I don't know how you can look at it in isolation when you consider our record, our history. I mean, even the Afghanistan war was basically a proxy war in a lot of ways against Russia. At least it started that way. And Syria kind of became the new proxy war. We've got Jack with us, pundit Jack Quirk. So glad to have him on Memorial Day. Jack, I am going to just use my power, make an executive decision. It is almost 12:30 here on the East Coast, half past the hour. Let's talk about the debt ceiling bill. That's how I promoted this particular live stream. And you made the exact same point I did, which is that when the two wolves, meaning Joe Biden, Kevin McCarthy, sit down to negotiate, we're the lamb. We're going to lose. We're the lamb to the slaughter. So I really appreciated that comment. I wanted to get you on. And I'll tell you what, Jack, and then you respond. At first, when I read through a lot of the details, I thought this isn't so bad. Biden did not get rolled by McCarthy. And I still feel he didn't get rolled by McCarthy, but I really feel like we got screwed by both of them. And I highlighted one of the most, to me, egregious provisions, which is that if this is passed, and by the way, my friend Maury, the hero from the holler, Maury Johnson, we may have him later on this week, says we can still stop it. We're going to stop that Mountain Valley Pipeline. I sure hope Maury's right. I love his spirit, Jack, but per the agreement that is now being pushed on Democrats and Republicans in the House, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which is another carbon bomb, will simply be green lighted. No more court challenges, no more questions, and that is so troubling to me. And let me just throw one more out. I know I talked a lot. I'll give you a lot of time. Also, cutting back on IRS investigations into and audits of billionaires who are, who file returns where they're paying 5-10% of their revenue, of their income is just, I mean, what WTF is all I can say, Jack. All right, you heard my speech, but you heard my speech. If I go.
That was a win. That tax thing, but that was a win-win for both sides, right? I mean, they're both. Listen, this is the first word that came to my mouth there was a kleptocracy that we live in anyway. But I mean, there's listen, the Democrats are basically a softer version of a plutocratic party, right? I mean, there's some there's some people like AOC, and well, Bernie Sanders is an independent, and I guess I can see why. But there's the reason why I vote Democratic all the time is because the Republicans are nuts. They have to be, and what if you look at it from the stamp? Yeah, listen, that's not. They should have gotten the things that they wanted, or tried to get the things that they wanted through ordinary legislative proceedings, which of course they would not have been able to do because there's a Democratic Senate and there's a Democratic White House. This debt ceiling thing is insane. I don't understand this where just one group of people can say, look, if you don't do what we want, we're going to tank the entire economy, and that is, that is a psychotic way to to run a government. I don't understand that, why we allow that at all. In fact, I've been thinking we need a constitutional amendment to prevent this. And just say, from now on, the debts. I know people are saying that the 14th Amendment has this provision, and I was all for Biden saying, listen, let's not negotiate at all and use the 14th Amendment to pay the debts, and let them litigate it. And that's what I was in favor of until somebody said, well, the problem is that those interest rates on the bonds that are issued for under that provision are going to be pretty high because there's going to be a question to it. And the other thing is that when you get up to the Supreme Court, we've got a ideologically conservative Supreme Court. By conservative, I mean Republican. And I wouldn't have held out a lot of hope that they would have upheld Biden's 14th Amendment action if they'd gone that way. So he might have been stuck in that sense. But that's crazy. You can't just threaten to tank the world economy if you don't get what you want. That's legislative terrorism, and I don't think that's just not the way things should run. We need a constitutional amendment to prevent that sort of thing again. And sure, the punchline, of course, is that McCarthy's right wing is maybe not going to go along with it, but I don't think that that they've got the votes to prevent this from going through. So I think it's going to pass, but and limiting and capping things at a 1% growth. You can't you can't just you can't plan things that way. You can't, you don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. You don't know what kind what's going to evolve. This goes back to the Ukraine thing because we can't cap the military expenditures because we're financing, as we always do, the military industrial complex. Fortunately, this time without American troops, at least compelled American troops. And so they're gonna, so you can't cap that because there's no telling what we're going to need there. And so the real problem comes from the fact that you've got a minority that has an outsized power based on the way we operate things, and that goes to a whole lot of things: gerrymandering, debt ceilings, everything else. And that's what's got to stop in the long run. I see the larger issues past what what the benefits or detriments are to the deal that are there. And I got the New York Times article up here now, still trying to go over everything that's been decided upon. The only good thing I can say is that, and as your friend says about the pipeline, future Congresses cannot be bound by a previous Congress. So that's always something to look up to. And to that extent, maybe what's happened has been entirely theater. But
Well, it's
But-
not theater because there are real world consequences to this
Well, yeah.
settle
No,
fight.
I'm
So-
talking about there's real world consequences to what they agreed to. But if somehow the Democrats retake the majority in the House and keep their majority in the Senate, and you have a Democratic president, then this is,
I don't know how you, but you can't.
find that Congress.
That's true, but you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Once that pipeline is approved and comes online, there's nothing that can be done. I mean, and the damage will be so great. I mean, let me see if I can get a picture of this because it's so upsetting to me. This is really what broke my heart. And I also am not clear whether there is or is not. There were mixed reports, so we don't know. And again, this is just the agreement in principle that the two of them reached: McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, and Biden, the President. So a lot of it, as you said, may or may not transpire. I just don't see the Democrats fighting. I just don't see I think the House Republicans have demonstrated over and over, Jack, that they're far more prepared to buck their leaders, to take on their entire party than the House progressives, who seem to consistently fold at the last moment. No matter how big a game they talk, they rarely, if ever, actually seem to have the courage of their convictions. So I'm far more pessimistic.
That's because they're sane. That's
well,
the problem.
no, but is it sane to have yet another carbon bomb when we're burning our planet up? How sane is that? Maybe they should be.
But it's not. But the problem is that the right wing of the House that I'm going to show. I'm out of date. I keep calling them the Tea Party.
The Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus.
The Freedom Caucus. Yeah, what they.
Isn't that a great? I love that moniker, though. By the way,
they'll blow up the world economy. They don't care about anything.
Well, I mean, there's things Biden could do. So there are ways. There's ways Biden could get around that. For example, he could have. Well, let's go back a little bit. I'm going to digress, Jack. The Democrats controlled Congress for the first 2 years of the Biden administration. They could have actually passed a bill then to avoid this debt ceiling fight now. They didn't do it.
Right.
They actually had that power, and they just they kicked the can down the road.
Yeah, and the Republicans did this before. They've used the same strategy before, and so there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't have anticipated.
Of course. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Secondly, also, the Democrats have been deficit spending. I'm not a big fan of it. I know a lot of people say it's okay. It's certainly true. If we were in a depression, you would want a deficit spend. But at this point where we have massive wealth and income inequality, the Democrats would have been much better served by raising taxes on the most affluent rather than deficit spending and debt and adding to the debt. That would have also avoided this problem if they had simply jacked up the rates on the wealthy, which they could possibly have done in various ways during the first 2 years of the term. I know as a Catholic, you would have supported that. And they didn't. They didn't. There was even no talk of it. Barely any talk of real tax hikes on the rich.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know. You've got I don't know if there was enough finance in there to get past it. And
it would have been tough with Cinema and Manchin, right?
Well, yeah, and you had Cinema and Manchin to deal with too. So I mean, they didn't really have even a majority in the Senate with those two people hanging around.
Well, then cut taxes on the military. Then cut taxes in areas where the individuals that need government to survive, to make it to next week, let alone next year. Make sure that those are funded, but at the same time, he's got the power of the purse. He's the president. Just stop paying some of those military contractors, delay delivery. There's lots of little gimmicks and things you can do, but he didn't do those.
Actually, the power of the purse rests with the House of Representatives. So that's the.
Well, he has this. Okay, you're right, but he has the power of the pen. He doesn't have to spend the money. Yes, they authorize the spending, and thank you, but he doesn't have to spend it.
Well, he's got to follow the law.
Well, but if then the law is telling him to do two things: spend the money, but don't spend the money, right?
No. Well, the law was telling them to spend the money. No, we need. What's going on is.
I think there's a tremendous amount of discretion.
We got to talk the larger picture here. Okay, we're losing the forest for the trees here. On the one hand, the Democrats just sit there and don't do anything. On another hand, when they're in power, like you just pointed out, they get power and they just sit there. For example, one good thing. No, I don't want to get off on that track. I was going to talk about gerrymandering, but that's another issue for another time. But they don't actually use the power that they have. We both agree on that. They get there and they just sit there, and they get a majority and don't use their power. That's a problem. The other problem is that there's a corporate Democratic wing, Democratic large D. They're so you can talk about the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, but it's questionable how much power they actually have within it, because you have Biden himself. I mean, he runs for president and he says he's not going to do Medicare for all. He specifically ran on that, and so that's so you got that particular problem there. The Democratic Party is split, just like the Republican Party is split. But the problem is the extreme version of a Republican has got more power and sway within their ambit than do the progressive Democrats on the Democratic side. And that's just the problem we have. What you need to do if you want progressive policy, you got to make more progressives.
Well, I think, Jack, I think you're being a little too soft on the progressives. The Progressive Caucus is the largest caucus in Congress. There's well over 100 of them, much larger than the Freedom Caucus, but they don't stand united. They don't stand, they don't say they will not support bills or legislation if it doesn't contain their priorities, or if it, for example, includes greater spending on the military. They just don't do that. They could, and they don't. And they also all voted, every last one of them voted for a corporate, pro-war, centrist Hakeem Jeffries to be the House Minority Leader. Every single Democrat did that. This is a guy whose biggest support comes from Wall Street and from AIPAC, and yet AOC and Ilhan Omar and every last Democrat, Jamie Raskin, all voted for Jeffries. They didn't take a stand, and this is very problematic. You can say, well, the House Minority Leader doesn't have that much power. It sets him up to be the the Speaker of the House if Democrats get power back, which may be not for a while, because people find them as loathsome and despicable as they find Republicans.
They're right, aren't they?
It's true. I mean, but I'm just saying. What's the progressives don't fight. They roll over and put their paws in the air.
Yes, that's true. I can't deny that, and I'm not denying that. It's just that I'm, and maybe they're not actual progressive. Maybe they don't actually believe in what they're saying, if you consider that possibility. I mean,
I think what happens is, here's what I think. I think sometimes they run for office and people, I give AOC more credit than some on the left do. I think she probably really had the courage of her convictions when she took office. She did take on Nancy Pelosi, but you know what? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. I think we need, and I know you and I disagree on this. You don't like political parties at all. And I think this is a good argument against them because the party itself sands off all the rough edges of these folks and brings them into line. I say it's not that we have we have too many parties. I don't think we have enough. I think we need a party that is going to be completely independent, that is completely separated from the Democrat Party in all respects. Its candidates don't overlap. So the Working Families Party, you often have in New York State, the Liberal Party, which isn't liberal, the Working Families Party, where they run both as Democrats and as working families. I don't want that. I want completely separated parties, like a Green Party, which competes in every election, and that is wholly separate. That is a power base that's completely apart from the Speaker of the House, right, or the minority leader, from the president, that has its own power base and that keeps its members in line.
Well, see, here's the problem with that is that when you've got first past the post single member districts in the United States, and that sort of thing is always going to result in a two-party system, because if I've got a particular interest, say my interest is strawberry ice cream, and and that's what I'm there for. Now, where am I gonna put my chips on? I'm gonna go with one of the major parties, because if I go with the Greens or the Libertarians or what have you, you're gonna I'm always gonna be the odd man out. The third parties in the United States are nothing but ideological ghettos. That you get a bunch of people that all agree on a few issues, and then what happens is that they may run candidates every election, but they never get anywhere because there's not enough people that have the same kind of ideological framework. See, the Republicans and the Democrats, notwithstanding the Freedom Caucus and the progressives, really aren't ideological. They are coalitions of interest groups. If we had a parliament, there would be a number of different parties within those large parties. So when you wind up with that situation, you've got a two-party system frozen in. That's why we've always had two parties.
I agree with that analysis, Jack. Spot on. Love to talk to you because you're so smart. You educate me. You're totally right about that. But here's the but. What you're describing for me sounds like we've got no real options. It sounds like there's no solution, because if we agree that the
we don't.
Okay.
That's why you have to abolish the political parties. You need legislation to get rid of them, and there needs to be a movement to get rid of them.
All right, but if you ban the political parties, then doesn't that create a situation where a Berlusconi, somebody, or a Trump is able to, as Trump was able to do, simply cuts through everything because they have the money, they have both of them, by the way, central media figures. Berlusconi owning media, right? He was a media mogul. Trump, from his TV show, having, household name. Isn't that what happens if you don't have parties?
I'm sorry. I didn't realize that Trump didn't win his election.
No, I'm agreeing with you that
I didn't realize.
But how is getting rid of parties going to change that dynamic?
Well,
it's only going to solidify it, right?
I don't think it'll do it. I don't think it'll do that. I think what will happen is that, first of all, you'll end up with congressional representatives and state legislative representatives that represent their districts as opposed to the political party. That's a major problem right now. You got people that get elected and they're on the lower tier of the party hierarchy, and they end up voting with the party without any regard whatsoever for what the needs of their district are. You know, it's uh,
Oh, I agree with
so
that, Jack, but I just
yeah,
don't,
okay.
I agree with that,
And
but I
so
think that
you,
the potential for corruption almost becomes worse because as bad as the parties are and as corrupt as they both are, at least they offer some alternative power structure to the corporate, financial, and plutocratic class. Corporate
well,
and financial elites and their
I'm
associated
sorry.
plutocratic class. No, I
This is what
understand they're very tightly, closely connected, but if you didn't have the party, I don't even know how you'd get, and not as problematic as AOC is, in my opinion, I don't see how she could possibly get elected if you didn't have a Democratic Party structure for her to run in.
no, because she got elected because she had ideas that the people in her district agreed with.
Right,
You
but
know, you get
but she was able to, at least to a degree, present those to the people through the Democratic Party, which she wouldn't have that option
well,
if there was no party.
I don't know. She'd be able to do it herself. I mean, the Democratic Party didn't give her ideas. The Democratic Party uh, give her uh, didn't give her mouth. You know, we've got social media now. We've got an internet. You know, the
I'm
reason
not real.
why.
Are you optimistic though about our social media stars being on the side? You know, they're like Trumps. They're hustlers. They're snake oil salespeople. Look, I won't say I was ever fool. I don't want to say I was snookered by Jimmy Dore. I think he's steadily moved into a position where he basically just has now become kind of a I don't want to say demagogue exactly, but he's a hustler now. He just says what he thinks his audience wants to hear, and I find that very, very problematic. Final word on this, Jack. Let's get to we got 8 minutes left. I want to get into the presidential election where we are right now, and if that offers us any hope.
Hope for what?
Better leadership. Better leadership.
Well, it's the way it's panning out right now. It looks like it's going to be another Biden-Trump election.
Well, you've got in these latest polling here, so RFK, who's been completely ignored by the media, as is Marianne Williamson, they're at about 28%, 27%, somewhere in that range, maybe a little less, but there's clearly no rush to anoint Biden by the great majority of Democrats. He has a bit over a 50%, maybe 60% when he's running against the candidates who have announced. But most Democrats say they don't want him to be president. Would that be, in your view, preferable if somehow a groundswell rose up in support of RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson?
Well, RFK Jr. is a vaccine denier, and to me, that indicates he is incapable of the critical thinking necessary to be president. Um, uh,
I'm not going to argue with that point. There are other factors involved as well, some of which I think militate in his favor, but others of which militate against him. So I'm not going to argue that point with you. In fact, I wanted to play a video of RFK Jr. I may wait until tomorrow because we're already at close to the end of the program. But I would just say that the arguments against Kennedy, I think, are also fairly made, very similar ones against Williamson, who is kind of a, what do they call it? A woo-woo, anti-science kind of feel good.
I like listening to her. She seems like a nice person, but yeah, I mean, to be president, you got to be able to pull the trigger. And
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well,
do you mean the nuclear push the button? I don't want someone pushing the button.
Well, I know. What I mean is you've got to be able to, unfortunately, in this vale of tears, you cannot be there's only so much peace, love, and dope that can carry her. I mean, I like Marianne Williamson, but I don't think she's presidential material. You gotta have a little more savvy when you're dealing with international players. You know, how would you do against Putin?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
she's come out on her website, Jack, in support of our aid to Ukraine, which for me is a big no there. She is. I've met Marianne Williamson, and I was very disappointed when she offered a ringing endorsement of any blue will do voting in general elections. So I am not. I would say though that those positions would tend to support. At least from your perspective, would make her more attractive as a candidate because she seems to, take a position that's closer to yours, which is, yeah, we do need to support Putin. We need to oppose Putin. And yeah, we can't, see anything good in the Republicans. So I don't agree with her there, but maybe that would make her a better candidate from your perspective.
Well, any blue will do isn't really the way I put it. It's not that. See, I'm not a Democrat so much as I am an anti-Republican. That's okay. That's my.
But that's her point too. That's kind of her point too. As bad as Biden may be, as much as we may not like the rank and file Democrat, nevertheless, the alternative is fascism. The alternative is nuclear war, whatever it is. The alternative is an end to our freedoms. So that seems to be her position.
Well, I agree with that, but here's the thing: it's you need, but I don't want to stop there. There needs to be, and I don't have the organizing skills necessarily, but we need to have a movement where people are educated as to what the issues are, because the media's the corporate media is so
right. It's so dishonest. And so tendentious and biased. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. There's not a way for people to get the information they need to make critical decisions about this stuff. And so somehow, and I'm saying with the internet and everything else, yeah, there's whack jobs on there, but the problem is that it could be used in a constructive way as well.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what we're trying to do here. Jack, I'm sorry to rush you along. We are getting really towards the end of the program, and I want to give you just a minute or two. Looking at the polls, I think you can see them on your screen. I hope so. How concerned should those who view any Republican presidency as basically the end of the world as we know it or close to it, how concerned should they be about these polls that show both DeSantis and Trump with slight, within the margin of error, leads over Biden at this point?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because it's too small for me to see. But well, I think that's very concerning. You can complain that there's a lot of age discrimination when it comes to Biden. People think that and because of his speech impediment, they think that he's a slow thinker, which is absolutely wrong. But it just it's bad. I mean, if we get another Trump presidency, who knows what'll happen with DeSantis? But well, you can see the way he governs the state of Florida, so that gives you some idea. And another Trump presidency would be, I think, very problematic.
Well, do you trust those polls? Because
not just domestically, but internationally.
Well, I guess we would agree we don't want Trump to be president. I don't want Biden to be president either, however. But I guess my question, to narrow it down and understand, of course, the concerns if either DeSantis or Trump were to prevail would be very, very bad for our country. But the question I really have is, how much do you trust these polls? Do you think that the race really is right now a dead heat? And one where, if anything, especially given the way the Electoral College works, one that might well favor Republicans. After all, DeSantis is the governor of Florida, and both Trump and DeSantis, as I understand it, have pretty solid leads in the Sunshine State, which is critical for a Republican victory.
Well, the Electoral College is slanted towards Republicans, the way that it is. The way it operates. It doesn't even operate the way the founding fathers anticipated, but people still use it. And the reason why it operates the way it is because, again, political parties. That's why, you win your state by a plurality, like maybe 49% to 48%, and you get all the state's electors, and and obviously that's going to facilitate a minority party, which the Republicans are. I mean, that's why.
Well, both parties are. To be fair, both parties are minorities. Most Americans don't like either one. And since 2016, I think, well, there's only been 2 elections. Neither candidate, no candidate has gotten a majority of the votes since Obama did in 2012.
Mm-hmm. No, that's that's a serious problem, and the reason why that largely is because the primary system helps and facilitates the extreme versions of both parties.
So to wrap this up, 2 quick questions. A, you wouldn't be surprised if Biden loses in 2024, but well, let me just break it down. Are you confident that Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee next year for president?
Yes. Yes.
Would you be surprised if he did not prevail in the general election?
Mildly surprised, yes.
What can Democrats do now to maximize the chances that he serve a second term?
Well, first of all, don't vote Green Party. Third parties don't work.
What can the Democrats do so that those of us who are disinclined to vote to reelect Joe Biden aren't tempted to vote for a third party?
Well, to get you to vote for them, they'd have to have more progressive policies, right?
Yes,
but that's not going to happen.
Well, then you're saying there's you.
So what you got to, not with Manchin in the party. So what you got to do is, that's the problem with the 2-party system. You've got to vote. You have to vote for the lesser of 2 evils.
Jack Quirk with us. Thank you so much, Jack. Great to have you. That's going to do it for today's program on Memorial Day. I wish everyone a happy Memorial Day, and I look forward to speaking to you tomorrow. And I promise, I can't absolutely promise with zero possible uncertainty, but the very strong likelihood is I will open with RFK Jr. tomorrow. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and a great Memorial Day. Oh, we're not hearing Jack. That's okay. I silenced him. I muted him. Back tomorrow.